Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is episode 89 of VR Roundtable. My name is Anthony, and I am joined this week by Steve and also Chris. So it is going to be a three-man crew this time. Gary is taking a well-deserved break. I believe he's doing some family things, so hopefully he's having a good time over there. And you know what? We got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. This is basically our post E3 episode. So we're going to be talking about everything that kind of happened over E3. I know it's kind of old information at this point, but you know, this is the first time that we've been on air since last Sunday. So we have to, and remember last Sunday, we did that episode prior to Bethesda and Xbox and all of that. So we have to kind of weigh in on all of that. So first, let me kick it over to Steve. Steve, anything going on over there, Louisville, Kentucky? Any kind of little pop culture things going on, or anything you want to mention before we get started today?
Nope. Other than here in the States, it's Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to you, Anthony. Tell your dad happy Father's Day, Chris. You're not a dad yet. One day you'll get this. And to all the dads watching, happy Father's Day.
Yeah, Chris, what about you? How's everything going over there? Any new gadgets that you've picked up recently, or have you cooled your jets a little bit?
I just got pizza in a bag the other day, which was so cool. It's just this jerky that tastes exactly like pizza, and it's shaped in a bag, the packaging. So that's cool. I definitely gotta get my dad some of that for Father's Day. But happy Father's Day to you guys and to everyone watching for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, let's just, and here in Sacramento, nothing's going on. It's the same old story, although it's actually overcast and cold for a change, which is, that's why I'm wearing this. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the E3 situation. And what we're going to start off with today is we're first going to start off with our general E3 takeaways. So the question is, you know, were expectations met? And so let's go ahead and jump over to Chris first. Chris, you know, E3 is kind of in the books now. Not a ton of incredible stuff going on here, but were your expectations higher than what happened, or were they pretty much met, or are you walking away disappointed here?
I'm not really that disappointed. If you saw last episode, I was kind of down on everything, not thinking anything was going to happen. And I feel like more happened than I expected, which is good. I really thought VR would have been kind of swept under the rug this year. And it was to some degree, but also there's still games that are going to be coming out that will include VR. So I'm happy about that. I'm starting to think that like VR is going to just kind of, all the announcements are going to happen at something like Oculus Connect or something, like all the actual VR games, because it seems like E3 just isn't really the place for that anymore. So as much as it should be one day, maybe still isn't really the VR conference we want it to be yet. But overall, I was happy, but also, you know, I wish more happened. Obviously, if it did, that'd be great. Yeah.
All right. So, Steve, I mean, obviously, you're a PlayStation VR guy as well, and when it comes to E3, that's a lot of it. You know what Chris was just saying there. E3, not really a PC thing so much. Well, for flat games it is, but I don't know. What was your take, Steve, after all of this?
Well, you know, last week I think we were all pretty even killed, and we're trying to go into E3 with a realistic approach, and within that, I think expectations were met, or the lack of them. I was a little down on it because I had hoped to have at least like one game, one bullet point. If we look at the E3s of the past, I'm pretty sure VR support was announced with Resident Evil 7 back in 2016, and this is before the PlayStation VR launched. And then last year, of course, we had that 5-ish minute sizzle reel of it was like 5 or 6 PlayStation VR games that kind of was right in the middle of the keynote. It had, I think, Star Child and Moss, and that was capped with Skyrim VR, which was a pretty big deal. This year, I get why Sony didn't put anything in their keynote specifically, but I still had hoped for one big announcement, and we'll go into more detail of it later. But yeah, my big takeaway is I thought there would at least be kind of one key game, one driver for VR that was announced, and it wasn't. So I'm a little bummed in that sense.
Yeah. My take on it is, I mean, well, from the PC side of it, like HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, or maybe even Windows Mixed Reality, not really shocked by what happened. We normally don't expect a lot, but Sony is the one thing where you do expect a little something. And I always said, and this is the same thing with Steve, is like I thought there'd be one big one, one really big one. And for example, like we got a really big game in Stormland for Oculus. That's one really big one. That's probably the biggest VR game that is floating out there right now. And I was hoping that Sony would have one thing like that, kind of like a Blood and Truth was a big one, that we heard about and didn't really get that. Although we did get Astrobot, prior to E3. So there were some pre-announcements that kind of changed it a little bit there. But so let's go ahead and get into another kind of overreaching question. And basically, this is kind of like a state of VR question, I guess. Is VR heading, and I'm going to ask this to Chris first, is VR heading to kind of like a lull? Or are we, I mean, it's often been said we're in the trough of disillusionment and that we need to check our expectations at the door. This is going to be a long haul. All these kinds of things. Chris, do you think, where do you see VR? I mean, what's the state of VR just going forward?
Yeah, it's it's a little bit of that down period between the indies and the AAAs actually making games. I'm sure there's a lot of games in development, or at least early in development now, like since everyone knows VR is going to be successful, especially when Gen 2 comes out. So we're definitely in that little area where there's been a lot of indie games. There's been some decently sized games coming out, but there's nothing really big, and you can't really just keep making these little games because it's not going to really push the platform. So I do think late 2018 is going to be a little bit boring. There's not going to be too many releases personally. Probably just a lot of indie stuff still coming out like it always does with VR, but we'll probably have to wait at least a year for some of these AAA games to start coming out or start being announced even. So that's what I think is what's going on. So maybe we'll have to kind of wait till Gen 2 to get those big hitters again, because right now we don't really have any.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think about all this? Like, doom and gloom all the way, or it's kind of like what we expected, but there's a lot of people that have jumped into VR recently, and when you first jump into VR, you kind of think like, okay, this is a movement. Now we're going to VR. And so I feel bad for those people that really think like we're moving to VR, which I think we are, but it maybe in 5 or 6 years. And so I don't know if some of these people are really ready for the slow trickle of what we're probably going to get.
Well, the sort of the concern I have is business. Business says there needs to be an audience to support making a very high budget game. And everyone seems to believe, myself included, that VR isn't where it was expected to be. So if it's not where it's expected to be, and so far for the last 2 years, we've been eating on sort of the pre-VR launch budget decisions that were made. Fallout, they announced Fallout 4 VR, for example, but I have to feel like they made that decision internally at Bethesda considerably earlier than they announced it. So up and from the launch of VR to now, have we been living on the pre-launch sort of hype of VR? And now, since VR has kind of failed, I shouldn't say failed, but since VR hasn't necessarily done what was projected, are we going to see a decline of investments? And that's where I'm concerned. I don't know if it is a Debbie Downer kind of thing, but yes, I am concerned as a fan of the technology. I'm concerned that there isn't much business sense now to make large scale investments in content and software, which is a vicious circle because that's going to slow down the adoption rate. So I have concerns, and I still think, and I'm reiterating things I've probably said a million times before in the past, but I think the to kind of quell this investment issue, this business, this dollars and cents issue, would be to do some binary, some cross-platform stuff where, one key example was Resident Evil 2 remake that was shown during Sony's keynote. That appears, as far as we can tell, to be done in the same engine that Resident Evil 7 was. I think that is maybe a prime opportunity to give a game like that dual support, for the mainstream audience, and kind of keep feeding VR on the side. Yeah, it's not a native VR game with motion controls. It's a gamepad. There are issues there. A portion of the VR community won't like that. But that sort of thing, like take some of these mainstream games and just give them enough of an investment to get VR support. And I think something like that would sort of keep things afloat till the audience grew to a point where, we can have more things like Stormland announced where it makes financial sense for these developers and publishers to make the investment.
Alrighty, so why don't we go in and let's cover a few of these conferences that happened and just some quick reactions here. So we'll go ahead and start it off with Xbox. And if you watched our show last week, all of us kind of said the same thing. We all pretty much assumed that there would be no VR whatsoever at Xbox's conference, and we weren't disappointed, unfortunately. No VR. Not a huge shocker here because we are relatively late in this generation, even though we have, Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. So it's kind of a weird generation to a degree. We're still late in this cycle, and it does make sense that if Microsoft was going to go down that VR road, see, a lot of people, it's funny. We got into this last week. A lot of people think they can just flip a switch and VR is here and it's great. And yeah, make the Windows mixed reality headsets work. And that's all you got to do. No, it's a much bigger deal than that. They have to have studios primed and ready. They've got to have some real experiences. It's a major investment, and they obviously don't want to do that at this time. And that makes sense. Now, the scary thing, though, is at this Xbox conference, they started to get into the future, and talking about future hardware. In fact, I thought this was a little bit surprising. They were talking about their next consoles already. And, they just came out with this Xbox One X thing, which they are trying to get a lot of money for, and they're trying to sell that and pimp that. And they're already talking about future consoles. But one of the worrying things to me was they're talking about these future consoles. They're talking about frame rates and stuff like this, but not a single mention of VR. And so, Chris, let me ask you, looking forward from an Xbox standpoint, do you think it's possible that, like, let's say Microsoft comes out with a new console, say November 2020, which is what a lot of people are starting to speculate at this point. Could they possibly come out with a new console in November 2020 and not have any kind of VR solution? And then a bonus question, I don't know if you guys have heard about like HoloLens version 2. Now there's rumors that HoloLens version 2 may use this new the new platform that Qualcomm, is it the XR1 or whatever, that new chip, that really low-cost chip that they're talking about? Supposedly that might be inside HoloLens 2 with the idea that it would dramatically lower the cost of HoloLens version 2. So, hey, maybe HoloLens. What's your take on Xbox maybe in 2020?
Yeah, I think it's very clear Microsoft has decided that VR is going to stay a PC platform and they're not going to have it on console for a long time. I mean, I would hope that there'd be like a surprise announcement with the next gen where there's just VR and there's a million games, there's a Halo game and all that. But realistically, I think, Microsoft already kind of gets a little bit of the VR pie just because they have their platform on Windows, and maybe they just feel that that's more capable. It's not like Sony is making a desktop operating system and making Windows mixed reality or anything like that. So I think Microsoft is just still going to focus on that for a long time, and I don't see it. I think they just see the Xbox as being the most mainstream thing you could do, and VR just isn't really that. Whereas I think Sony pushes the boundaries more of what's kind of possible with consoles. Like if you look at just the Xbox One, controller versus a PS4 controller, like the PS4 one has accelerometer, gyro, it can be tracked with the light, all this extra little stuff, and then Microsoft just has Xbox controller with no features that like do things like that. So they really kind of seem to be doing none of these like gimmicky things, but also that just means they're not really innovating anymore. So I don't really see it, which sucks. Yeah,
Chris, to be fair, they did create that weird controller thing that for like handicapped disabled people, that was really cool. That's one cool thing that Xbox did do. And a lot of people actually were looking at that interesting design and thinking, man, there's so many different things you could possibly do with that from a VR standpoint. But,
That's true. Yeah, definitely just seem to be adapting whatever they can do to help people, which is good. But they don't seem to be making new stuff for everyone. Yeah.
So, Steve, what do you think? Xbox, new console, maybe 2020. Will they just forget VR altogether? Maybe work on VR secretly in the background and kind of take the thermometer and test the pulse of the public to see if they want VR? I mean, what are they going to do here?
Well, I don't know. My crystal ball, because it works really well and I always depend on it. I would say if I were Microsoft and what I have to assume that they're doing, with whatever new hardware they're going to lay out, they're going to plan for VR. Now, they may not talk about it. They may not launch the next Xbox with a VR product. But I think, to Chris's point, he was talking about, well, even as something as simple as the gamepad, they don't have all the stuff in the controller that Sony has. They don't have the track light. They, if there was Xbox VR today, there would be no way to track gamepad. So I think they'll kind of fix some of these infrastructure issues with the next console, and then when they're ready, whether that be at the launch of their next console or if that's 2 years after the launch of that console, when they're ready to talk about VR, I think they will. But I do think that they will have enough foresight to plant the infrastructure roots that they need in the hardware so that they can launch a product. Because I think that is one of the issues now, that combined with the power of the original Xbox One or the Xbox One S, I don't think it can support VR, and I think ultimately that's the one thing slowing them down. And I think the industry needs Xbox. They have Microsoft because we do have the HoloLens and we have the mixed reality platform, but it needs Xbox because that is a major voice within the community saying VR is not valid. VR isn't legit. We're not even looking at it, and I think that fuels a little bit of the flame of the sort of the anti-VR crowd, and it won't be a fully legitimate thing until Xbox is on board.
Yeah, as far as my take, man, I don't know what to think really, because on the one hand, they really dodged a bullet as far as there used to be pressure on them about VR. There's literally no pressure. No one is asking anything about it. That honestly, that's one of the most damning things. If you want to go down the doom and gloom road, we are definitely in the trough of disillusionment. I don't think there's any question about that. And there's no pressure on them. And I don't know that there's going to be any pressure on them come November 2020 either. So, because the thing that Microsoft has to deal with, I don't know that they can just dip their toe in VR and if they're going to go down the VR road for Xbox, specifically Xbox here, if they're going to go down that road, they have to have studios primed. You need a catalog of like 20 VR games. You can't just come out with a handful of VR games here. And even if you're going to do a relatively minor thing, Sony, when they launched VR, they had to have all these developers with games ready to go to have a legitimate launch. I don't know that Xbox is going to do that. And then the HoloLens question is interesting because what seems to be happening here with the HoloLens version 2 is if they can really lower that cost by using that Qualcomm chip and maybe get it down to, chop the price in half. If they can get it to $14.99, that makes it a lot more interesting. They can get it to $1,000. That makes it really interesting. But then you're competing against yourself. If you also have a VR product, it's like, well, Microsoft is going to be selling these two different things that you put on your head. I know HoloLens is standalone, but there's a little bit of cannibalization there, or a mixed message there that could be confusing. So I don't know, man. I kind of think Microsoft is just they're gonna work on some stuff in their labs, but I think they're gonna kind of stay on the sidelines. So why don't we go ahead and move over to Bethesda? And so Bethesda's been having these E3 shows for, is this the third year or the fourth year? They've been doing this for a while now. And for the longest time, we never thought they'd have enough stuff to show off, enough studios, enough games, but they've proven us wrong. They always have some stuff to bring to the table. And they've kind of been a champion for VR to a degree. And so we were looking forward to them. We made all these predictions last week. I said Fallout 4 is definitely coming to PlayStation VR. I was completely off the mark on that. We did get a few announcements from Bethesda. Basically, we have this announcement of Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, which is going to be coming to PlayStation VR. It's going to be coming to Steam as well. Not sure what other platforms that might be coming to. That appears to.
They mentioned the verbiage used was HTC Vive. So yeah, we have to assume that's Steam. And going off of Bethesda's history, that might mean that it won't support the Rift very well at launch, sort of like a Doom VFR or even a Fallout 4. Like, you could load them up and they would run, but the controls were kind of janky or wouldn't work right at all. So I say we have to, just to be fair, assume that it's going to be HTC Vive supported via Steam and then PlayStation VR.
Yeah. So we have this Wolfenstein Cyberpilot, and the good news with this one is it is a standalone, like it's a legit VR thing. It's not just VR added on. So that's good. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Elder Scrolls Blades. So this one is curious because, well, it's kind of, we don't really know exactly what's going on here, because what they said was it's going to be on iPhones, it's going to be on iPads, and it's going to be on Android devices. And on those platforms, it will be free. But they also said that they're going to try to put it on basically every platform known to man, and that it would be on high-end VR. Now, a lot of PlayStation VR people are like, oh yeah, Blades is coming to PSVR. But there really was no mention of that whatsoever. We did see people with HTC Vives supposedly playing it, so that's good. But Chris, in terms of this Elder Scrolls Blades, we've got Skyrim. What's the difference here? Like, why is somebody really going to want to play Blades when there's Skyrim?
I think just because it's like the newest game in the series. Obviously, it's not Elder Scrolls 6 or anything like that, but to me, I was excited just because like I can play it with my girlfriend's on her phone, like in another room or something, and I'm in high-end VR. And I feel like the VR people will probably do better than the people on little phones or whatever. But I think I just more like the idea of making a game that works everywhere and like will work in VR too, and also would work on phones. And like it's a really cool concept to me. That's kind of like what Minecraft was for a while. You could play Minecraft on Gear VR, you play on desktop, console, whatever. And it's it's fun on all the platforms and kind of the same experience, but obviously VR enhanced that. So I'm kind of excited just to see how good they can make the graphics in VR. Hopefully it's not like a scaled, it's like a mobile game scaled up to VR. Hopefully they kind of make it look super good in high-end desktop stuff and then scale it back for mobile or something like that. But I mean, from the little stuff I saw about it, I think I'm excited. Like there's a lot of unique features, like you can build your own town and stuff in there. So whenever that comes out, that'll be exciting to see what happens. But I don't know how VR support will work on that at all. It'll be wild.
Yeah, so I mean, it's supposed to be coming this fall, at least to iOS and Android, but we don't know exactly when it's coming to PC VR. But Steve, you know what? You are Nostradamus Jr. because on the last episode, you did say something about, on iPhone too. And we do have some stuff on iPhone.
Well, yeah, I'll take credit for that because I did make that joke. Sort of as an aside, Bethesda seems to be pretty well aware of Skyrim being a meme at this point. When they, I don't know if you saw it, guys, but they had the comedic blurb of the Skyrim very very special edition with that actor. I can't think of his name now, but he was playing it on Alexa, and then said also coming to your Samsung. Smart refrigerator, and it showed him playing it on the refrigerator. So it was just a joke thing. They weren't being serious, and I thought that was pretty good. But I don't really have too many thoughts on this. From an industry standpoint, we know mobile is a major force, and there's certainly benefits to releasing a game on mobile because it puts it in the hands of everyone. I think a lot of companies are searching for that sort of Pokemon Go phenomenon thing to go viral. This being cross-platform with VR is interesting. I don't think it's the first game to do it. I haven't played a game, but wasn't there a soccer game or something like that a while back that you could play on mobile and in VR? Maybe I'm misremembering. Someone in the comments will probably correct me, I'm sure. But yeah, either way, that's an interesting aspect. In theory, I could play with my kids or something. They're on their iPads and I'm in VR. So I look forward to seeing how it goes. I don't expect a ton of depth out of it. From what we've seen in the trailer, it almost looks like a stand in place and sort of just slash your sword, which would make sense because on a touchscreen device, all you're going to do is swipe. So that may be sort of the depth of the motion controls when playing it in VR. But I'm glad that it exists. But I'm not convinced that it's going to be this major experience that it's going to drive the VR community.
When do you think we might get it?
I couldn't say. They were very clear in that it will come to iOS and Android first, and then PC later. And it sounded like once it gets to PC, that the VR support will come at that same time. But as far as I know, they didn't clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the big questions, though, it does go back to the Skyrim question, because we just got Skyrim, this huge, massive thing, in VR, and then you have Blades. And so why would I go into Blades? I guess, my guess is Blades is kind of the more arcadey, get in real quick, you can play a quick burst kind of a thing, rather where Skyrim, you got to spend an hour to do anything at least. And this Blades can kind of be more like that 25, 35-minute burst of quick Skyrim-like action. And I guess if I'm hoping, like on the positive side of things, because Blades is a newer property for them, maybe they were working on VR like from the beginning with Blades. I mean, I'm hoping, and then maybe the motion controls, because the thing about what you're talking about, like swiping on iPhone and all of that, one of the problems with Skyrim on the big boy version in VR is that Bethesda really has to sit down and figure out, how do you do melee combat in VR? And I've said, they need to hire the guy that did Gorn, the guy that did the hit detection in Gorn, and how your armor falls off and it gets weakened and stuff. That's the kind of thing they need to do. And so hopefully if Blades, if they kind of thought about VR from the beginning with Blades, which is doubtful, but maybe, then hopefully that would be really cool, but probably more of an arcade type thing. So let's talk about, there's one other one I completely missed. Okay, so Prey. Now this is confusing here. So we have the game Prey. Okay, now there is a DLC called Moon Crash, and then there's this thing called Typhon Hunter, and then there's TranStar VR. I don't know, man. I'm confused. Steve, help me out with this.
Okay, so I think I might have a typo in the notes. It might be Typhoon Hunter. But yeah, so Bethesda announced two VR modes or two VR elements of content coming to Prey. Prey was a game that I believe came out in 2017. I personally haven't played it, so I'm not entirely sure when it came out. But here at E3, a lot of the trailers was talking about the Moon Crash DLC for Prey, and I believe it launched the night of the Bethesda keynote or very soon thereafter. So this Moon Crash DLC is available now if you have Prey. However, the VR content is coming to those who have Prey and who also have this Moon Crash DLC, but it is not yet available. So you have DLC content that's available, but not all of the DLC content is available yet. It almost sounds like they need to frack it out and just call it a separate DLC pack or something. But either way, that's the deal. If you want to play this stuff when it's available, you need to have Prey, you need to have Moon Crash DLC. The two modes, Typhoon Hunter, which is described as basically a multiplayer mode that's cat and mouse, which the best way to describe it is if you have a PlayStation VR and you've played the VR the VR room. It has one of the little sub games in there. It has this little cat and mouse game that you play. I'm sure this is a deeper experience than that, but that's sort of the gist of it. Is you're trying to find someone else. So there's not a lot of trailers or anything that we've seen explicitly for this content. And then TranStar VR, there is some out if you want to see on YouTube some other channels where people got to play it at E3. It's really just a standalone escape the room type experience according to Bethesda. So we haven't seen a lot of this content yet, but they announced it.
Yeah, and I gotta hope that when this actually does come out, I think Bethesda would be smart to have some type of breakout version of this that VR people could buy if they don't have Prey, they don't have Moon Crash, they don't care about either one of those things, but they just want to play the VR thing. I think they would be smart to break that out somehow and have that piece available on Steam and wherever else. And PlayStation VR people are talking about this as well, and everything I heard, I did not hear any mention that this stuff is coming to PSVR, but a lot of PSVR people believe it is. Now it still could. It would, typically they bring their stuff everywhere, but we don't know. But let's go back to Wolfenstein Cyberpilot real quick before we move on, because this is the specific VR game that Bethesda is bringing out. And I'm just going to say myself personally, I don't know. It looks a little disappointing to me. Now, here's the good news. The good news is Amazon had a listing for this already for PlayStation VR, and it might have been a mistake that they had it out there and people found it. And the price was $19.99. And so that kind of suggests that this is going to be a very, a small, not a major thing here, kind of Doom VFR, but maybe even smaller, because Doom VFR, I believe, was $29.99. So I don't know if this is an Amazon mistake. And the thing is, when they have mistakes like this, if you buy it now, you're locked in no matter what happens. This is also a 2019 game, hopefully early 2019. And it appears that you're not really going to be on boots on the ground walking around in VR. Instead, you're going to be controlling Nazi machinery, robots, tank type devices, and you're going to be using this machinery against the Nazis. So it's kind of like you're a hacker. You're like in some kind of facility somewhere and you're hacking into these devices. You're taking control of these devices and then you're using them against the Nazis. So I'm going to send it over to Chris. Chris, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for this, but are you a little bit, what do you think? Are you excited for this, or do you think it looks a little lame? I don't know.
It does look a little lame, but I'm just excited because it's anything about VR. But based on the trailer, all that you can really see is you controlling one of these machines where you're shooting fire at the enemies. And it just seems like that's the whole game if you just watch the trailer. There's not really any other stuff going on. There's maybe a mech that comes out at the end, and hopefully you can pilot that. I don't know. That would be cool, but they didn't really show gameplay of that. So far, the only thing we really know you can do is you have this fire gun and you shoot things, which is fun. It does look like more of an arcadey thing. This is the level, destroy the people, you're done type thing. So I think $20 is pretty reasonable for that, coming from Bethesda. So I'm excited for what it is, but definitely it's not that big of a release. It's not going to be that, I don't know. I don't know if we'll be able to recommend it when it comes out, but we'll have to try it and find out. But
I think that
it's not in your top 5 most wanted.
Yeah, I think that $19.99 early price from Amazon reflects the depth of the experience here. This isn't going to be an 8-hour campaign or anything like that. And I think drawing the comparison to Doom VFR is probably a good one, and it may be even a step shy of what Doom VFR was. The name, it's Wolfenstein Cyber Pilot. Cyber Pilot, the pilot really kind of reaffirms that it's pretty much just going to be you piloting these mechs, or this flame shooting mechanical dog type dinosaur looking creature. Though, Anthony, going back to last week, you did mention Wolfenstein coming to VR. Now, you were talking about it in a retro first-person shooter sense, but I don't think anyone else on the internet would have associated Wolfenstein coming to VR in any way other than you, so you at least get a half a point. Yeah, like it's now looking at all this and Bethesda as a whole. I think they've done reasonably well with VR. Obviously, they have some of my favorite games to play. But even looking at E3, they at least talked about stuff. They talked about new stuff. They made it a part of their presentation. Yeah, it wasn't, it wasn't showing off Elder Scrolls 6. It wasn't Fallout 76. It wasn't their big points. But they're at least keeping it somewhat in the limelight, which, as a big fan of VR, I dig it. And I'm glad that they're at least keeping it semi-relevant, even if it's in the smaller, bite-sized morsel sense.
What's interesting about this Cyber Pilot thing is that when we first, like Sunday night, we found out about it. And then I don't know if I think it was maybe Monday, there was a trailer that was out there, but it was in German. And a lot of people didn't know if it was a fake trailer, like somebody had, mocked up a trailer and tried to fake it. And because when you would watch the trailer, because this speaks to what Chris was talking about, when you watch the trailer, it doesn't look like the most professionally produced trailer that we've ever seen, which to me kind of suggests this might be a ways away. I don't even know if we're going to get this in early 2019 based on that trailer. But the good news I'll say about this is, again, this is a relatively low-priced game. So we got to understand that. But the other thing I'll say for it is this is the first VR game from Bethesda that is like, well, I mean, Doom VFR, I guess. I mean, but, this is a VR game, and they've kind of thought about this from VR from the beginning. And I think they thought, well, what could we do in VR that would kind of really work and make sense? And they're thinking, I know what, we'll put people in all these different contraptions, and they'll have this first-person perspective, and maybe they'll have all these levers and switches that they can click on and that sort of thing. So I think maybe that's what they were going for here.
Yeah, it does look like they started with a concept. They're like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. And then they said, okay, well, let's put it in a Wolfenstein setting. They could have just as easy put it in a Fallout setting or, not so much a Skyrim setting, but like, it does seem like they started with the idea rather than start with the game universe and walk it forward, which is fine. Again, I kind of go back to my previous point and that I'm glad Bethesda's doing something.
One last question before we bounce away from Bethesda. What do you guys think in regards to Fallout 76 possibly having a VR mode at some point in the future? Do you think there's any chance of that? It seems like they're running on a new engine here, so it could be a major cost for them. Chris, what do you think? Any chance Fallout 76 maybe next March or something gets a VR mode?
It's definitely possible, but it's not going to be on release. Like you said, maybe like a few months after the game or like a year after the game. That could be another announcement for them that, oh, look, we have VR support again on another Fallout game or something. But I think they'll hold out on that. Yeah.
Steve?
I think I don't think it'll come. If I do, I agree. I think it'll come later. I think with Fallout 76, I'm not sure it's a new engine, but they've made additions to it, and we know Fallout 4 doesn't run very well. I have an 8700K and a 1080 Ti, and I have to back things down on Fallout 4. So I think there would be issues running it in VR, but more importantly, from what little I've seen of Fallout 76, and I've become quite the Fallout fanboy. So I thought it looked great, and I'm very interested in it. But it's got that sort of thick multiplayer theme, and it looks like you need to respawn quickly. And one of the problems with Fallout 4 in VR is that the controls are still not super good for doing quick decisions. VATS helps a lot. I don't know if there's a VATS component online. If I'm trying to shoot you, Anthony, I don't think I can go into VATS. How does that work? So, making those quick decisions, being able to change weapons, bring up your weapon wheel, change weapons, do all that, like sort of intertwined with people playing on a gamepad or on a keyboard and mouse, I don't know that it will work too well. So I think they have a sort of an interface and a control issue with Fallout 76. But let's hope for when there's a Fallout 5 and the next Elder Scrolls, and the what's their sci-fi one, Starfield. Let's hope that all of those come to VR, the more traditional single player experiences, because I think that's really what people are going to want the most.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move away from Bethesda now, and we'll go back to Sony. We mentioned it a little bit before, but we haven't actually discussed any of the games that were announced that we never heard of up until this point. And we did find out of a couple of games. I mean, of course, we found out about Astrobot prior to E3. But at E3, we found out about Trover Saves the Universe, which is coming from Squanch Games. Now, these are the guys behind Accounting Plus, Justin Roland again. And then we have I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I'm just going to say Daracine, but I know it has those little squiggly lines on top in a couple of places. But this is coming from Software in collaboration with Japan Studio. And I'm not sure if Steve is playing the trailer right now, but this thing looks it looks pretty damn good. This looks like of all the games that have been announced that you would add to your most wanted PSVR list, this one looks like it's going to kind of jump into the top 10, maybe top 15 or so. It does look pretty good. And then we have Table of Tales, The Crooked Crown, which is also going to be coming, looks like a strategy type game. So these are the three ones that we didn't know about really. There's a couple of other little minor ones like Kill X and Gene Rain and all, like a lot of
I didn't
smaller
hear of
games.
Gene Rain. Kill X, I've actually played Kill X because that demo was on, I believe, the Chinese PSN store. So I've known about that one. But what's the other one you said? Gene X?
Gene Rain. Yeah, there's a lot of little things that are also coming to PSVR, but not like from some Chinese developers you never heard of, but they were shown off at like China Joy back in 2017 or something like that. So they have some other ones like that. But basically, Trover, Daracine, Table of Tales, these are the ones that seem to be new. Now, Trover looks pretty cool because what we've seen with a lot of like Accounting and Accounting Plus, it's more of like these little skits that kind of play out. And Trover looks like it's some type of third-person action platforming game, but is also going to feature that kind of humor. Chris, I'm not sure if you've seen the trailer for Trover Saves the Universe by Squanch Games. Looks pretty cool. What do you think?
Yeah, it does look cool. I love Justin Roiland and Rick and Morty and all that, so I'm glad that he's still making games and he's still making VR. When I first saw the trailer, I thought it was just for PS4, and I was pretty sad, but thankfully it's coming to VR as well, which is good. I'm just excited. It sucks they used to be called Squanch Tendo, but I wonder what happened there. Now they're just Squanch Games. Wonder Nintendo probably sued them or something. But no, that definitely looks like a really promising third-person game for sure. Like, I love that humor, so I'm gonna be all over this game. Hopefully, it comes to PC VR though, eventually.
Probably, it's probably one of those temporary exclusive type things that we so often see. Steve, what about you? What do you think about which one of these three games speaks to you the most?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So, Trover Saves the Universe was really the only one shown during the keynote, so I have to think that that's maybe the bigger one. But and I like the Rick and Morty. I don't watch the show. I played the game. I liked Accounting Plus or Accounting. I never played Accounting Plus. So I sort of like the humor. But I think my vote would have to go with Daracine. And I'm probably saying it wrong as well. We'll say it 47 different ways before we hear someone officially mention how it's pronounced. But I'm a huge fan of Bloodborne and to a lesser degree the Dark Souls games. And so I love From Software. And even though this seems to be very different palette, some people are speculating that it was sort of sets in a pre-Bloodborne universe. So all that has to shake out. A little bit of a impatient vibe, not necessarily from the setting, but we don't really know. Like for a long time after they announced Impatient and then leading up to very close to its release, we didn't know what the gameplay was going to be like really at all. The trailer that we have is very cinematic looking, but we don't really see any gameplay. So I don't really know what to expect. Now, since this trailer, and I didn't have a chance to work it into the video here, but there were some screenshots released, and it shows almost like Oculus Rift hands, where it was bright colored hands and they look very similar. So it does appear to be a first person oriented game. We at least know that much. And my hunch is that it's very sort of adventure, sort of slow paced. I'm not expecting really any action or anything based on what I've seen. So very narrative. So yeah, I remain very curious about this one, and of the list of the few that I'm seeing for the first time out of E3, this would be the one that I would go for if I could choose only one to play right now.
All right. And before we kind of move away from Sony, we already knew, we knew about Astrobot and we knew about Firewall 0 Hour. But the good news with these two games is that a lot of people got hands-on time with both of these games. And the early word is really good on both of these. And Astrobot was confirmed for 2018, so probably fall 2018. So that's definitely a big one for us to look forward to.
They also pegged it at I think they said 7-8 hours ish. So it's like it's gonna be like an 8-hour robots rescue mission, which is fantastic. So I'm very excited about that.
Absolutely. And then Firewall 0 Hour. I mean, this is probably the number one most wanted PlayStation VR game from a lot of people out there. It really kind of has that Rainbow Six, Counter-Strike kind of a vibe to it. Graphics look pretty good. We saw a lot of lot of videos of this game being played, and with Adam Orth on stage at PlayStation kind of talking about how it works. And then of course with the aim controller as well. This one is going to be really key with the aim controller. Chris, I mean, what do you think about these like Rainbow Six style games? Are they your bag, or do you just kind of avoid them?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who play like Rainbow Six type games, so I'm sure they'd be super happy about this announcement. But yeah, me personally, it's too much planning for me. I have to be too into it for that. So I'll try it just because it's VR, and I might be able to get into it because of that. But I've never really liked any of those VR multiplayer shooter things. Yeah.
Steve, what about you? You do have an aim controller, right? So you're probably jonesing for another key experience to use with that. And this could be that. And then the other thing too here is that the developer said this is coming very, 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 very soon, which seems like maybe July at the latest, right?
So yeah, that's very interesting. So more about that specifically. So I didn't write down who tweeted it, but some media account. It wasn't the developer themselves, and it wasn't Sony. And this Twitter account had said that they were quoting the developer and saying that it was coming very, 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 very soon. That's 5 varies. But then First Contact, the developer, retweeted and liked the quote. So to me, that gives its credence. So I do think it's coming very soon. So that's exciting. I do agree that it's probably one of the most look forward to PlayStation VR titles, and for very good reason. To this day, Onward and to a lesser degree, I believe Pavlov are still some of the most played VR games, and then right there with that, Rec Room. It's a little bit more Boy Scouty version of what Firewall 0 can be, but those 3 games are they're beating the community issue. When you look at all the other games like say Sprint Vector and Rigs, I was playing a lot of Rigs when it first came out. Those all died off. The communities completely vanished for the most part. Onward and Pavlov and Rec Room, the communities are still there, and I think Firewall 0 can do that, and for good reason. So yeah, it being with the aim controller, it being an online shooter where people can just put hundreds of hours into it is going to give it tremendous value. I look forward to it. I didn't really play any Rainbow Six back in the day, but I have played a fair amount of Call of Duty, and more importantly, going back to my college days when I could play a video game 8 hours every day, I played a metric ton of SOCOM, the whole SOCOM series. So this really has a SOCOM feel to me. So yeah, I look forward to giving it a go. I doubt I'll be able to be someone who puts 50 hours into it nowadays, but yeah, it looks pretty great, and I get why everyone's jonesing for it.
Yeah, I'm curious. See, I still have not picked up an aim controller, if you can believe it. And because I was going to get it with Bravo Team and then found out that Bravo Team was kind of a dud. But we haven't heard anything about a bundle for this. So I wonder if it's because Firewall Zero Hour is a game they're probably going to sell for maybe $49.99 or something, or I don't know, $39.99, $49.99, something like that. And so bundling it with the aim controller might be almost like too much of a discount right away. So maybe that'll come a little bit later. But from the aim controller standpoint, I am interested from that standpoint. Not much of a multiplayer guy, really. And then when you get into these team games, I always feel like I'm going to be the guy that lets everybody down because I don't know the map by heart, and all those kinds of things. But we'll see how that one works out. Okay, so I honestly believe the single biggest game that we saw at E3 from a VR standpoint, now not counting Stormland, which came a little bit before, but I think Transference by Ubisoft is a really primetime game. And we got a much better look at this game. I remember last year at last E3, we heard about Transference. We heard it was coming from this company, SpectraVision, in collaboration with Ubisoft. And this is the Elijah Woods thing. It's a number of Hollywood luminaries that kind of got together, and they kind of came to this realization that, hey, VR, AR, this is going to be a really big deal. Let's set up this new company, SpectraVision, and let's work on some kind of next-gen Hollywood gaming collab entertainment. And that's kind of what they're going for here. And Transference, we originally heard this was going to be a spring 2018 game. Obviously, that didn't happen. We found out with this newest trailer that this is coming fall 2018. So this might be like a November kind of release. The trailer is pretty good, really shows a little bit more of what's going on here. And Chris, I'm going to ask you, so you've always been the type that is a little bit hesitant when it comes to a lot of these horror games. We didn't really know that Transference was going to be a horror game, but if you watch the trailer, that's kind of what it seems to suggest, as one of maybe one of the 5 biggest VR games from a AAA standpoint that is still on the way. Transference is definitely in that mix, but you don't really like horror games. What are you going to do, Chris, when this comes out?
I don't know. I got a few options. I can either just sit through it and be scared and like scream all the time, or just give up. With a lot of games, I try to push through just for the show and everything, but I feel like if I was just playing myself, I just wouldn't buy this game. It looks so cool though. Like I would play it on a monitor because I wouldn't get too scared. But in VR, I'm like, it looks crazy. But I really love how it mixes those like 2D videos of the father with like the 3D environment, and like, man, it looks really innovative. Definitely. Like I know in the older trailer, it seemed like it was just some weird thing that was hopefully innovative, but you can definitely see them like doing some unique stuff with this. So I'm really excited. I'm going to try to push through through, but
Chris, real quick question before we go to Steve here is, have you ever tried playing any of these horror games, but where like you're in a room of like, there's like 5 or 6 people in the room with you and you're playing the game, you can hear them talking. Have you tried that? Cause I would think that might help you get through it a little bit.
Well, if that's the thing, is I've done that, and then people like poke me when it gets scary, and then it's even more scary. But if I had good friends, that wouldn't happen. But yeah, that would probably help. I always end up playing horror games in the middle of the night with all my lights on, which is just a terrible idea. So I need to just play it in the middle of the day.
See, if you had a PlayStation VR, what you could do is PSVR, the headset, you could like slide it out a little bit, and then you see more of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Steve, let's go ahead and kick it over to you, Steve. Steve, Transference. This looks like a big one. What's your thoughts?
I do think it's a big one, and Elijah Wood getting up on stage only helps the issue. More on horror specifically. I'll tell a little story. Like, first, I'm a big fan of horror. I haven't played as much horror games, I'd say, in the last 9 months to a year as I did in sort of the early first year of VR. But I was playing Brookhaven Experiment one night, and I don't particularly think that game is scary, but I was playing it. It was late at night. I had the lights off in the room, and my wife was out working an event, and she came home, and I didn't hear her come home, and she came into the room, and she said she was in the room with me for about 10 minutes waiting for the perfect moment, and right as a zombie or a creature got up to me, she oriented herself in that same position, and physically grabbed me. And she said I had a look on my face. I ripped the headset off. So to sort of the point you were making, Chris, of your friends messing with you, yes, you can absolutely cause someone to have an early heart attack if you time it well and really want to mess with them. But Transference specifically, I'm pretty excited for it. It does look like it has a horror skin. I think it's more of the psychological, almost sort of Alfred Hitchcock or Stranger Things sort of slant than it is a more of a raw like Candyman or Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street type of horror, and those are a little bit different in the sense. The scariest game I think I've played still in VR to date is A Chair in the Room, and it wasn't as visceral as even say Resident Evil 7 was. So I think the psychological variety, which Transference looks to be very psychological, that's sort of the whole plot, is that this dad is from what I gather is trying to reconstruct memories digitally and maybe put them in the correct order or change them. Maybe there's be a branching story path or something. But he's trying to it looks like the digital memory has been corrupted and he's trying to tie it all together. So it looks like it's very psychological in nature, which might make this game pretty exciting if they're able to pull it off. I think it's maybe something more difficult, for the developer to do rather than just, a linear game or even sort of a typical open world game. They have to make sure people are looking at the right things at the right time. So in VR may make it interesting, but yeah, I'm very excited for this. And I think it does have the title of most interesting potential.
What about the fact that, because I think when it was announced last year, I don't remember hearing anything about a pancake version, and now we're hearing that you'll be able to play this on PS4, Xbox One, blah, blah, blah. Is that concerning at all? Because, I mean, anytime I don't know, for me personally, I kind of like it when a game does not have a pancake version whatsoever, because then I know that no compromises were made so that it would play better pancake style. Does that concern you at all, Steve?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really concern me with a game like this. I get what you're saying, and I definitely agree in the sense that native stuff is better. But going back to the top of the show, I get the business decision. So in a world where honestly money matters probably more than anything else, in the sense of developing content, I'm not saying money is the most important thing in the world, but in the sake of a business deciding to make video game content, the money aspect is very important. So I would much rather have this game and it not be VR exclusive than not have this game at all. And I don't know if that was the business decision here. So I get it. I'm not going to let it bother me. And with the type of game, it may not be action or necessarily interaction heavy. It may be more of I don't want to say passive, but more where the world's happening to you rather than you're happening to the world. In that sense, it's okay.
All right, well, let's move on to the next game we wanted to bring up real quick, and Space Junkies. So this is coming to us from Ubisoft Montpellier, speaking of Ubisoft. And Space Junkies is a game we heard about quite some time back. And we heard it was coming spring 2018. Obviously, it missed that a little bit. But the closed beta is going to begin on June 28th. Now, if you want to get into this, you have to register and sign up for it. So, later this month, I mean, we're 10 days away or whatever from this. So that's kind of exciting. And for me, my excitement in this game has increased from the standpoint that Echo Combat. See, I was hoping that Echo Combat was going to have lone Echo type backgrounds and stuff included into it, and it didn't. It was just, so Space Junkies has now shot back into my radar as giving, that outer space kind of feel with also blasting guns, and like inertia is like super important in this game. You fire your gun, it's going to send you backwards a little. So you got to consider all of these things. Chris, have you been tracking Space Junkies at all, or is this one kind of catching you off guard? Are you going to try to sign up for this beta, or are you just going to like watch it from the sidelines and see how people react?
Yeah, I mean, it did catch me off guard. I don't think I've personally seen a trailer until like I looked at it today, and I was like, wow, that looks a lot better than Echo Combat, just based on what you said, Anthony. Like the environments look way better, way more alien-like, and like honestly, the interactions of everything looks really, really good. So I'm way more excited for this than Echo Combat right now. Definitely, I gotta sign up for that beta. I'm assuming you will too, right? So we can all hopefully play that if we get in the beta. But I mean, yeah, it looks really promising. Like the graphics look really good, and Ubisoft usually puts out games with good graphics, and they've done a lot in VR. So I'm definitely excited for this now. Like, well, didn't know what it was before, but now I'm just like, whoa, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, what about your thoughts? Because, the thing is, this is Ubisoft, and this is probably their biggest bet in VR so far. I mean, they had Eagle Flight, and, they've had a couple other games, but this seems like their first really big type of bet into VR. So I'm kind of excited from that point. What about you?
No, I'm very excited for this game, and I've registered for the beta. I haven't got anything other than the initial confirmation, so I don't know if it's going to be, hey, 10,000 people register, but only 2,000 get in kind of thing. I'm hoping everyone that registers gets in. That would be much cooler. I'm very excited for this game. I think if you look at Echo Arena and Echo Combat, drawing a flat game parallel, that's more like Rocket League. Whereas Space Junkies is more like Call of Duty Black Ops on Nuketown. And it looks, it's bright, it's colorful. I think the idea of playing with like Earth being like just there and part of the environment, and these other planets and everything, I think it looks quite fantastic. I'm really excited for this game. I hope I get in the beta. I want to talk about it here in the next couple of weeks whenever the beta ends. The beta runs a very short period. The trailer, I think, shows it as June 28th to July 2nd, maybe. So that's what, a 4 or 5 day window. So yeah, I think this looks great. And I think from Ubisoft's perspective, I think it's an important bet. But I don't know if it's as big of a placement that they made considering the IP and everything of Star Trek Bridge Crew. This may have cost them less to make, but may be more popular and able to, for those that want to play online matches and everything, may have longer legs and replayability. Because I absolutely love Bridge Crew, but after you run through all the missions, the replayability took a step down.
Yeah, yes. One of the cool things I like about this, I've seen like some screenshots and video of it, and I mean, this is probably not accurate to reality, but some of the backgrounds that they have are incredibly colorful, vivid. It almost has like an underwater kind of a look with like violets and pinks and lots of crazy colors. I like that. So
yeah, and on that same part you're talking about there, it just came on the screen while you were talking about it, but the player has his hand on that asteroid rock type surface that sort of looks like the underwater coral, and it almost looks like it does have an Echo Arena 0G mechanic to it, maybe, which will be cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move away from games for a quick second here. And this is something I wanted to bring up because I just happened to see a trailer for this, and I thought it looked pretty cool. And so we've been having a number of TV shows that are kind of featuring VR. We have this show, I believe it's NBC. It's called Reverie. I've seen one episode of it, and it was pretty decent. Just missed the other one so far. But now we have a Netflix series. It's called Kiss Me First. And if you see the trailer for this, it definitely has a Ready Player One kind of vibe to it, or motif to it. And I was curious to get your guys, Chris and Steve, to get your thoughts on VR, on this like entertainment properties that are VR. Chris, have you seen Reverie on NBC? Have you seen the trailer for Kiss Me First? Is this something you're going to check out, or do you not really get into these like entertainment properties that also feature VR?
Yeah, I'll definitely check this one out. I haven't seen the one on NBC though, but I think a lot more people have Netflix or have access to Netflix, so that's good that this is coming to Netflix. I guess it originally aired in on a British channel back in April, right? Steve, did you write that?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's cool that like they've already seen it. I need to look at what the reviews were though, because I'm sure that there were some reviews on it from back then. But just the fact that it's coming to Netflix, I think, is huge. A lot of people are going to see it because of that, and I'll definitely watch it for sure. Yeah.
Before I kick it over to Steve, one of the things that you were talking about from a game standpoint was budgets, and how all these budgets were designed like years ago, and so the games have been trickling out from these budgets. Probably the same kind of thing has been going on in the movie category as well, because I'm sure Netflix, other companies think, oh, Ready Player One, if this becomes a huge deal, it's great to piggyback off of that and have a TV show. That was probably one of the reasons NBC greenlit Reverie. Of course, Kiss Me First, apparently this was in the UK first. Too bad we don't have Gary on here. Maybe he checked it out. But do you think that do you think we're going to continue to get properties like this, Steve, or do you think it's going to cool off a little bit and maybe we'll see a resurgence when VR starts to pick up a little bit more? Or do you think this is just going to be we're seeing a lot of sci-fi related things where, artificial intelligence, all these things are coming in, transhumanism, all this interesting stuff. It seems to be featured more and more. Do you think this is just going to continue, whether VR is in this trough of disillusionment or not?
Yeah, I think it will. For as long as I can remember, we've always had movies that it would have like a sort of a sci-fi element, and they're always manipulating the menus of their computer systems, with their fingers up in the air. And we don't really have an OS that does that really well yet. We have made improvements in touch technology, but it's still not, like the movies and stuff are showing. So I think that sort of sci-fi-ish, tech-ish thing can remain present. Maybe they're also trying to piggyback off of Ready Player One a little bit, like you mentioned. Either way, I think this series, Kiss Me First, I think it's cool. It's good. It does have a more than just a VR element specifically. It does have a closer ties to the Ready Player One and the Oasis, because it looks like there's this persistent MMO type online world that the characters keep kind of going back to. So it's very, very akin to the Oasis in that sense, rather than them just being VR fans. And in fact, the series looks to be less about VR and more about the dichotomy of living in both of these worlds, which is also sort of the big point of Ready Player One. VR was just a medium to get there. And I think it's cool, and I think it's always good to have VR in the sort of the mainstream eye, because there will be people that see this that have never donned a Vive or a PlayStation VR or even a Gear VR for that matter, and they'll be seeing this VR component. So whenever the time is presented to them to try a VR headset, it won't feel like this foreign concept. They'll be like, oh, I've seen people put on a VR headset before on TV. So I think there's pretty much nothing but great things from it. Lastly, talking about budgets. The good news when it comes to movies and entertainment, they do obviously have budgets they got to live by, but having VR as a component of the budget doesn't change the thing. You know, if it's going to be sci-fi-ish, you're going to have a heavy CGI cost, whether or not it's a VR related thing or just some sort of fantasy thing. So I don't think budgets really come into play as much within the movies and TV entertainment, which is also a good thing because they won't be bound to not kind of keep using VR as one of the themes or the mediums of their product. So awesome.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's all one thing I like about Netflix too is like, see, with NBC, I'm not signed up to any like, I don't know what NBC has, like Hulu or whatever, where I can watch them at any time. So, I mean, I wonder if you can catch those episodes of Reverie on YouTube or something. But the nice thing about having it on Netflix is it does give people the opportunity to check it out at any time. And it's there for years, especially it's a Netflix, they got the rights to it. So it's going to be on Netflix forever. So a lot of people are going to get exposed to it. And what Steve was talking about there, one of the things this does is there's a lot of people we know that VR is going to be this huge major deal because we have this vision of where it's going. And so we see what it is now and we recognize, okay, yeah, we're not there yet, but we know where it's going. We know where it's leading. And what these shows kind of do is it kind of lets other people know, this is kind of where we're going with this. And yeah, it might look ridiculously fantastical at this point, but we're eventually going to head that way. And so I think it kind of opens people up to that. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to get into here is Steve. I believe we do have the Days of Play, Sony's Days of Play sale that is going on, and we're recording this on Sunday, June 17th. I believe the final day for this Days of Play sale is Monday the 18th, and our episode should be up. So if you're watching this episode close after it's been posted, you probably have a handful of hours left in the Days of Play sale, and there's been some really good deals out there, especially PSVR related. For example, the Skyrim bundle, incredible deal. Steve, did you go ahead and actually grab one of these bundles?
I did. I think it was Wednesday or so. I had forgotten about it because I knew I'd wanted to get one and I wanted to offload my version 1. I sort of created the bundle and offload it. So really, in my city here in Louisville, on Wednesday I couldn't find one. I found one left at a GameStop, and yes, I had to get dirty and walk into one of those places because I typically will buy hardware either from Amazon or from even Best Buy before I'll go to a GameStop. But there was only a handful of GameStops that had any in stock, and most of them only had one. So the Best Buy had completely sold out. The Target had completely sold out of the Skyrim bundles. I wasn't really looking for the Doom VFR bundle. And you might be asking, well, Steve, you already had a PlayStation VR. Why did you do this? Well, the reason I did it was because I was able to upgrade to a V2 for a cost to me of about $50. And to me, that seemed worth it. I got brand new Move controllers, where my Move controllers were from like 2012 or whatever, like when they released Move. I had them sitting in the basement unused until PlayStation VR came out. So I got to upgrade to brand new Move controllers, get the V2 unit, and just get a brand new headset. All the little subtle improvements are pretty nice. It's not groundbreaking. If you are a V1 owner, like, I wouldn't invest more than $50-ish to trade up. Your experience really isn't going to change that much. So it's mostly just the reduced weight, because the best thing is not having that white, the button controls for volume and power. It's not hanging there right at your sort of chest level. That's a huge improvement. And then also not having the breakout box thing that sits, about 5.5 feet off of the headset. So like when you're standing up and playing a standing game, that connector is swaying and you feel that weight a little bit. You don't feel it anymore. The downside is not having that connector. You now have one long cable between the processing box. So like, depending on how you do your cables when you're not playing, it can be more of an inconvenience there. And then lastly, the buttons are repositioned to slide the unit out. The button is now on the top versus the bottom. There have been several. Well, I've only played it 3 or 4 times since I picked it up, so I haven't put a ton of time into it. But each time I played it, I've went to slide the mask away, and I've grabbed it from the bottom and sort of yanked on it without it actually giving, because I didn't squeeze it from the top, sort of a muscle memory issue. But I'll get past that. But yeah, I think it's an improvement. I don't currently have my PlayStation connected to an HDR TV. I am connected to a 4K monitor, but it's not HDR. But it'll be nice. I don't have to worry about that in the future. So it's a great time, not for just people to get in the days of plays, to get in on PlayStation VR, because the Skyrim bundle at $250 is a very good deal. But it's a good time for V1 owners to sort of flood the market and even reduce the cost of entry for people even lower, and upgrade to a V2 in the process. So good deal.
Yeah, if you check out the PlayStation VR subreddit, I mean, oh my God, it is swamped with just so many new people coming aboard. So, I mean, we can talk about this trough of disillusionment and like there weren't all these huge announcements and all this stuff, but a ton of people, there's a lot of fence sitters that it's like if the price drops to that magical, spot that really works for them, then boom, a whole mass of people come along. And that's kind of what's happened with this deal. I mean, it's hard to beat this deal. I went ahead and grabbed one too. I haven't received mine yet, but I think on last week's show, I might have mentioned that I was trying to get one from Costco, but it was sold out by the time I got there. Well, it came back in stock on Costco. So I was able to, Costco had a deal. It was $229, so $230 for Skyrim bundle, but you had to pay like a $5 shipping and handling, and I had to pay tax. So it bumps it up a little bit more, but it's still a great deal because, like you said, you're getting brand new Move controllers. I'm in the same boat. I'm using old Move controllers from way back in the day. The batteries are ancient. You don't know if they charge quite right. So, new Move controllers, new camera, the whole deal. And the thing that you talk about the thing that's swaying around 5 feet, that has always been something that has irritated me because it's always kind of flopping down around like my ankle or calf area. And even though it doesn't weigh a lot, there's still a little bit of that tug. So, I'll be curious to try that out when I get it. But yeah, that's definitely good news. And there still should be a few hours left in this deal if anybody out there wants to pick one up. Okay, before we get into games discussion, we do have one non-gaming experience that some of us tried out, and this is this Anne Frank house, which is on, I believe this is on Oculus right now. I don't know that it's on Steam at all. And Steve, you tried it out. I tried it out. I'm not sure if Chris did. Okay, Chris didn't try it out. Why don't I send it over to Steve first? What did you think about this Anne Frank deal?
Well, let's see where to begin. So, just in general, VR has a fantastic gaming capability to it. It can take you to other worlds, but with that, it can also teach you things or take you to real places without being a game. And Anne Frank is something that I believe is a name that I would assume is dang near everybody in the world has heard of. I know here in the States we are taught her story in maybe middle school or late elementary school, and being able to tour the house, I think was pretty great. The experience itself, what it is you are touring I've not visited the house in real life, but this experience is done in partnership with that museum. And what it's done is it's taken the house, and it, unlike the real house, it is rendered. And they put furniture in it and tried to make it more closer to what it would have been like when Anne Frank was alive and in that place, as opposed to when you visit the house now, the furniture is empty, or the place is empty. There's no furniture, so you see the physical space. And as what I understand, her dad Otto, he when the Nazis raided it, they all the furniture and stuff came out, and then he preferred to keep it that way. So ever since then, it's remained without furniture and without being recreated in the way that it would have been when they all lived there. So this experience puts you in that house, and it puts you in there in a setting. It's cleaner. Not that it was a very nice place, obviously, when she was there, but it's cleaned up in such a way that it's what you think she would have seen while being there. And in that sense, it's pretty incredible. As you're going through the house, captions come up, and they have someone narrating parts of her diary. So if you are in any way interested in her story or visiting this place, it's a very good way of doing it. Now, it's not perfect. At first, when I went in there, I thought it was photogrammetry because the rendering is really, really good, but also because it has like a lot of light field and other type of photogrammetry techniques. It has a sort of a feeling of your IPD not being set right. So yeah, I definitely thought it was photogrammetry, but when looking it up afterwards, I found out that it was a rendering. So it's worth doing. It's absolutely free. It is definitely on Oculus Home. I'm not 100% sure if it's on Steam, but I do believe it's also available on the Oculus Go. So I've rambled long enough. Anthony, back to you.
Yeah, so I tried this out as well, and you know what's crazy is, so Anne Frank, the Anne Frank diary and all of that, I've always heard about this, but I don't think it was covered in my middle school, or maybe I was like absent the day that it happened or whatever. But I always heard about this Anne Frank thing, and I knew it was related to Nazi Germany, and like I knew that she had hidden away in an attic or something. But I honestly didn't know the whole story, and it was something that I always heard but never like followed up on. Never read the book or saw a documentary or anything about it. So I just kind of had this basic idea of some Anne Frank thing, but didn't know much else. And so when I went through this experience, it was actually, I think, even more powerful for me because I didn't know what ultimately happened to Anne Frank. And so as I was going through the experience and you're hearing her diary and like the things that she discussed in her diary, and my God, she was mature beyond her years, some of the things that she talks about. But the thing that struck me was, despite being in this horrible situation that she was in, where death was like around the corner, she still tried to stay as upbeat and positive and hopeful as possible. And I didn't really know for sure what the end of the story was. And so when I got to the end of the story, I was like, oh man, and it really hit me. It was powerful. But one other thing I'll say about this too is I read a story, this is somewhere else and I don't have the details with me, but I read a story that had to do with education and VR. And they did a study where they took people and they had them learn from a two-dimensional monitor about like learning about stuff two-dimensionally, and then they had people in VR learning the same exact stuff, and then they tested them on it, and the people that learned in VR, their recollection was considerably higher than the people that learned on the 2D screen. And they said that it had something to do with spatial memory and the way our brains process information in relation to a three-dimensional space, that somehow we retain that information better than just in a book or like a two-dimensional thing. And the cool thing about this is, like, imagine if your kid was in middle school and had to write a report on Anne Frank, and something they dread normally, and they got to read a book or they got to see a boring documentary about it or whatever. Well, this is an opportunity. You could say, hey, I got a VR thing, put this headset on. It's a much more interesting experience. It's more entertaining. And I think you hold on to that information so much better. We are just barely scratching the surface, like a tip of an iceberg, from the standpoint of educational things that could happen with VR. It's really going to be pretty incredible in the future. But yeah, definitely check that out if you get a chance. So why don't we go ahead and kick it now over to a bit of game discussion? We've got a number of different games we want to get to here, but let's go ahead and start it off with budget cuts because I believe all three of us have played this recently. And so budget cuts, as you guys well know, it was delayed. We weren't sure what was going to happen. Was it going to be delayed a long time? But the good news is it came out. Now it's available for everybody. Anybody out there can get it. Not only that, it had like a debut, like it was 10% off. I think you could get it for like $26.99 and stuff. So a slight discount there. We originally got a press version of this game, and now we've played the actual full version, and there are some differences. Why don't I shoot it over to Chris first? Chris, did you get a chance to try the newer version at all, or any thoughts on it?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I didn't play too much of it. I played roughly where I was before, but I was more focused on, like, is the game stable? Is the frame rate better? Whatever, like, all these type of things. And it definitely felt like way more polished than the press version did for me. I didn't experience any crashing anymore, which is always good. I think we talked a lot about the gameplay when we first had the press version. Like, it's still really good and really fun, and I'm excited to get through the story with it. But I'm just glad that all the stability improvements are there and it's actually playable for me. It still gets some space warp unless I lower the settings a little bit, but that's okay. It's way better than it was before, at least on my computer personally. I'm interested to see how it ran on yours, Anthony.
Yeah, mine. I honestly didn't. Well, at first, when the full version of the game came out, I popped up Steam and it had to do a major update, and I forgot to switch it off the press version, and so I went back in and I'm like, I'm not noticing any difference at all. This is not good. And then I switched it over to the real version, and I did notice an improvement. And you can go into the options and you can actually, they have a setting, I think it's called fast and fancy, and so I put it on the fast one. Hopefully it would run a little bit better, and it did run better, but it wasn't like it solved all the issues. But then again, I'm running way below spec, so I really can't argue too much about that. The one thing I'll say though about budget cuts is, because there's a lot of people out there, they're still disappointed, or this has been a disappointment, blah blah blah, and it's got issues. It does have issues. It's not perfect. You're going to have problems. One time I was going through it and I found the key card, and I had the key card in my inventory, and then I get over to where a door requires the key card and I pop up my inventory and the key card isn't there, and that was kind of irritating. But despite these little issues here and there, this game still has, to me, it has a different quality than almost any other game. And what it really is, a lot of it is, I have to get down on the floor. I have to kneel down, like the vertical height, because you get into these crawl spaces, you'll shoot your teleporting gun and you realize, oh, I'm up in the ceiling. I got to get down, get really low to the ground, then hit my button again. And then now I'm in this crawl space and exploring it. It's just a different kind of a thing. The only real problem I have with this game, though, and I mentioned this the last time, is this is one game that could really use a wireless adapter, because what'll happen is I kneel down, I get really low on the ground, and that's fine, but it's when I go to stand back up, it's so easy for me to step on my cord as I'm standing back up, and then I kind of yank my headset, and that's always a bit of a concern. But I'm having a lot of fun. I barely scratched the surface. I am going to see this puppy all the way through. Does it run flawlessly? No. Does it have a lot of issues? Yes. Is it still very much well worth playing through the entire thing? I think so. That's my opinion. It's a stealth game, and if you like stealth gameplay, it's pretty damn good. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Well, when I went to load the final version, it made me restart the game, which kind of sucked. I don't know if you guys had that same problem or if you're able to resume where you left off. But I had to start from the beginning. And one of the things I noticed in the difference is that, like, all of the drawers in that initial cubicle that you're in, it's filled with stuff now. It has objects in them, whereas in the press version, they were all empty. So they've it's clear that Neat Corp kind of went back and kind of added a little bit of life to this world. But I won't say too much because I don't think I've played enough of the game yet. But I will say that budget cuts the game now is the demo. But a several hour long, however long it takes you to complete the game. Like they delivered on what that demo did. Like it is every bit as good as that, any bugs notwithstanding. And that's really the interesting point, because I know a couple times, back when they had announced the delays and all that, there was a lot of conversation around, how would budget cuts be received now in mid 2018, because the VR gaming landscape is a little different than it was in spring of 2016 when the Vive launched. And I'll say that I think the game feels a little slow for me. The teleporting you have to have the teleporting. That's a big part of the mechanic, of course. But there are times like, in that early area, in that initial cubicle space, like you just want to walk to where the elevator is, and the 2-stage teleporting where, the gun shoots kind of slow. And then once it's over there, you got to click the grip button to get it to actually do it. Like, it's just a little slower than I think I would like. But I don't know what they would do different, because again, they delivered exactly on the fantastic 2016 room scale demo that they made and that everyone loved. So I think Neat Corp did everything right. I don't know that it ended up being, this should have came out last year, and I think people would like it more, even though people do tend to really like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these games you're just going to have to live with the issues. But I do agree with what you're saying as far as like when you just want to walk 3 steps, having to teleport 3 steps is kind of, it does become a bit of an irritant having to do that. But I mean, the whole game is based around teleporting, so it's hard to argue with what they did there. But let's see, where do we want to go now? Okay, so you guys both played Royale. In Rec Room. I didn't get a chance to try that, but Chris, why don't we go to you first? What was that like?
Sure. So it was really good. I didn't know what to expect. I've played a lot of Fortnite with my friends. Like everyone seems to play Fortnite in around my age group. Everyone plays it. It's ridiculous how big that game is. So I was really excited to know that there was a VR version of it, kind of, and like it is very similar. You have the map, which is kind of the same mechanic. Like you open up the map, try to plan out where you're gonna go. The map looked very similar to Fortnite, which was cool, and a lot of the mechanics were very similar. I only played really 2 matches. I died both times, which sucks. I'm not very good at shooting in that game. But it worked really well. It had all the same mechanics. Like you go down on a glider, and once you hit the ground, you look for these chests, which in this case are coolers because it's a little bit different, like a little bit like a Boy Scout version, like you said, Steve. Like that's kind of what Rec Room is, I guess, in general. But yeah, there were different guns I found, and they all were pretty satisfying to use, and I got a couple kills, which was awesome. And I like that, if you have to get health, you have to drink the health potion or drink the shield potion, whereas in Fortnite it's just like automatic that you drink it. So it's definitely a lot more immersive than Fortnite for sure. I need to play more of this, like especially with my friends. I think that'd be really fun. But overall, like it's pretty good. Like it's a little hard. The controls of Rec Room are still a little for me, especially on the Rift. I bet on the Vive they're a little better, but like you don't just hold the grip button to hold something, and you can't just let go to drop it. You have to press like B to drop things, which just gets annoying, and this is frustrating. And I only have 2 inventory slots also, which is like so like I had to, if I can't, I have to have either 2 guns or 1 gun and a health potion or something. So I wanted to have like a lot of health potions and 2 guns, but you can't do that. But overall, like it's better than I expected it to be. I'm glad someone made a Royale game, and I think only the Rec Room people could get something out so quick. Everyone else is probably trying to develop a VR Rec Room and a VR Royale game, and they're probably taking, that would take months really. So I think it's awesome that there's something out there for the people who want to play Fortnite in VR, and overall I recommend it. It's it's a little not the same exact thing, but if you want a Royale game, like best bet you get is that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so, my take on it is well, first of all, some backdrop. My son plays Fortnite like no other game has ever existed. Just yesterday we were driving in the car, and he's like, "I think Fortnite is the most popular game ever." And I'm like, "No, no, no." He's like, "Yes, it is." He's like, "How many people you think play it?" And I said, "Well, recently, some stories came out that 25 million people have played it." And I'm like, "That's a really big number." And he goes, "Yeah, it's got to be the most popular game ever." And I was like, "No, I think that goes to Tetris." And so we looked it up, and I was absolutely right. Tetris has had like 170 million cells over the years. Like Tetris is obscene, and he's like, "That game looks stupid." Anyways, he's a huge Fortnite fan. We've gone to several Fortnite themed birthday parties, and I've purposely kept him in the dark, and my daughter in the dark about Rec Room. They don't know it exists. And so I loaded Rec Royale up and was playing, and I yelled for him to come up here in the office, and I was like, "Yeah, watch me play this game." And he's watching me, and I grab a shield drink and drink it, or a health drink, whatever, and he goes, "Is this Fortnite in VR?" I said, "It absolutely is." And he's like, "I gotta play it. I gotta play it. I gotta play it." So I played a few matches, and then I let him play a few matches. He's completely blown away because and then my daughter came up to watch, and they liken everything to Fortnite. They're like, "Oh, you got a legendary," and like you were saying, Chris, when you look at the map when you're coming out of the gondola, and my daughter's like, "Go to Loot Lake," but it's called something completely different in Rec Royale. But they're identifying all these structures and things based on the Fortnite version. So I guess where I'm going with all this and telling my anecdote here is that, this is Fortnite. This is Rec Room's take in recreating Fortnite as much as they could in VR. And I think they accomplished that. The whole mode is there. It feels really good. In a lot of ways, if you're a parent, you can even feel more comfortable with your kid playing this version of the game because it's very Boy Scout. Like, you don't kill anybody. It's called getting a hit. And it's a cleaned up from a like a rating and from a content standpoint. It's very clean in that sense. So I think it's fantastic. I hadn't been in Rec Room for a long time, like a real long time. It's changed a lot. I think Rec Room in general is probably one of the most valuable pieces of content available in VR, and the fact that it's free is incredible. I don't know how they're making money. Like, there's no ads anywhere that I could see. How these people are making money, I don't know. But yeah, Rec Royale is something I think you should check out if you've ever done the Fortnite flavor. It definitely delivers on that in VR. Minus some quirks, like you said, Chris, like the whole, you can't dual weld, but it lets you pick up two guns. But if you go to shoot one, like one of the other guns goes flying out of your hand, and it tells you cannot dual weld, which is kind of stupid. Like, why did it let me pick up two guns in the first place? So there is some inventory issues. Like, I want to switch, like I accidentally pick a gun up in my left hand, but I want it in my right hand, and I can't do that. So I have to like drop the gun and then pick it up with my other hand. So there's some quirks in that sense, but all in all, it is Fortnite in VR, and it delivers on that.
Hey, quick question. So I know in Fortnite, because my kids play that thing all day long, that's really the only game they play. And in their bedroom where they have that game going on, all I hear is the loading music just constantly, just the same Fortnite music over and over. Oh my God, it's burned into my head. But my question is, so are you actually like building staircases and walls and all that?
No, I'm glad you asked that because I completely forgot on that point. I don't think you can build in this version. So it does change the formula a touch. But the storm, that claps down, they call it the swarm. Like, it's the exact same concept, but they just give it slightly different names. But the storm is in, but as far as I've seen, there is no build mechanic, which I think I guess that would be pretty hard for them to pull off. You didn't notice any build mechanic, did you, Chris? I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, no, there isn't one.
Yeah, okay. So I played about 5 matches, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's probably an hour's worth of time, maybe. And then my son played another 5 or so matches, and I watched him through most of it. And I don't recall seeing any build.
Hey, Chris, quick question. Isn't there like an Oculus native version of Rec Room? Why wouldn't it be dialed in for the controls?
It's just not. I don't know. Like, Rec Room's tried to be very like works with everything type thing. There may be a way to tweak all that stuff in like the advanced settings of it or something, but No, it's always been like you when you grab something, it sticks to your hand. That's like always been the mechanic in Rec Room, which I feel like was just for Vive ones, but now that there's Rift, they should like add a feature for that. Maybe they do. I just haven't looked deep into it, but
Okay. So now, Steve, I know you've tried a number of different little experiences that you wanted to talk about. So why don't you go ahead and give us a roundup of, I think you got 2 or 3 different things that you tried here.
Okay, well, the first one, and I'll go through these quickly because we've been running a little long now. But so a couple of, I don't know, 5-ish weeks ago maybe, there was a Universal Unity mod. I think it's called VR almost looks like Virgin. That came out, and the idea was you could almost mod any Unity game for to be played in VR. So one of the games I picked up, downloaded and everything was a game called Ghost of a Tale. And honestly, I picked this up because Sweeviver and Paradise Decay, shout out to those guys, they made a video of it. And I'm always about trying mods because I'm always looking for see how content translates to VR. But there's a game called Ghost of a Tale. It's a game that I'd never heard of before, but this was conveniently timed around the release of Moss on PCVR. So it's a game that centers around a mouse. It's sort of a action RPG-ish type game. Very, very clean, almost Pixar looking animation style. Graphically looks very good. This is an indie game, but the mod, this VR mod, works really well with Ghost of a Tale. And it is a mod, so you still have the quirks and stuff of dealing with the mod. But it's worth checking out if you have the game or if you don't mind playing the game. I don't know if you could go through the whole thing in VR, but it's like a very dressed up Moss. And now Moss is, I think, a better VR game. So if it's between this and Moss, get Moss. It's really not a question there. But if you think of Moss as, say, a PS2 game, and I'm not saying Moss is, I'm just trying to draw a parallel here. Think of Ghost of a Tale from a graphical standpoint of being like a PS4 game. That's how different they look graphically. It's third person, so when you're controlling the mouse, you're seeing this mouse, it's not a first person perspective. But the scale, unlike Moss, where the scale of the mouse was really small, the mouse appears to you because you controlling the game, you're about the size of a mouse. So this mouse is like 6 foot tall. This mouse is huge. So you get the scale, you meet some frogs and some rats and some other relatively small animals, but they all appear giant. So it's pretty cool in that sense. The game is $24.99. I didn't keep it. It's developer by Scythe CG, SEITHCG. It looks to be a cool game. If you're still into flat gaming, I'm not, and that's why I didn't keep it. So the game actually on its own looks to be a very good game. In VR, it looks pretty incredible, but there was some clunks and some annoyances in that. It almost looked like a slowdown, like my graphics card couldn't keep up, but it was just in the animations. So it's probably one of those deep-rooted thing like VSync, but VSync applied to only the animation, some type of thing you couldn't change in a setting. So it's clunky in that sense, but it's worth checking out if you already have the game, or if you don't mind buying the game and you want the game just to play it. Check out the VR mod because it's gorgeous. It looks good, and maybe with some tweaking, someone that knows how or can spend the time with it, it could be really dialed in and be a really good VR experience. So I thought that was quick. Keeping on the theme of mods, I'll jump into the next one. One of the best games to get a mod in VR is the Alien Isolation mod by Nibre. He or she, I still haven't confirmed that. They had an update to the mod. I think we're on version 0.6 maybe. So not quite to version 1 yet, but this was a major. We haven't heard anything on this mod in terms of updates in a long time. But this mod added snap turning, which is a really big deal because if you played the game prior to that, you had to use smooth turning, which had a nauseating factor even for those with iron stomachs and who really had their VR legs. Smooth turning in this game wasn't great. Now the snap turning makes it play just like any other gamepad game, or even motion control game for that sense, where you've had to rely on snap turning. So one big huge improvement there. And the next big huge improvement is when you interface in terminals in Alien Isolation, like that's where you do your save and where you do other sort of story related elements, it brings the terminals real close to your face, not too much unlike Subnautica. And it's so close it's disorienting, and that's what the game did natively. So Nibre has found a way to, when you go close to a terminal, you can just back away a little bit and you can control your depth, so that is now comfortable for you. So two sort of really big annoyances have been chucked away now in this version of the mod. The last really big thing for them to figure out is motion controls, and they're working on it. So we may get the gun in your hands and motion controls in a future update. It is being worked on. But just in general, on Alien Isolation, we haven't talked about it in forever. And like budget cuts, I seem to have lost my save, which is incredibly frustrating because I was like 4 hours in, at least, maybe even longer. But it is one of the best games I've played in VR. Just the mood and the atmosphere. Like, if you haven't checked this mod out, like you really should. If you can deal with it. We were talking horror earlier. Like when you come across a xenomorph, you can hide in a locker and you can see outside of the vents. And there is 6 DOF with the headset. So like to a degree, when you lift up, you can kind of change the angle that you're looking out of the vents, and you see that xenomorph go by. It's pretty tense. So it's something, if you haven't checked out, you completely should. And I think
how
that's
would
all.
you
Go ahead.
Well, how would you rank it among like the scariest VR games you've ever played? Like, is that number 1 or is it in the top 3? Or
it's definitely in the top 3, mostly because it's tense. Like, there's nothing like it's not a fear of the unknown. So like with Chair in a Room, it was fear of the unknown. Like you didn't know what was going to happen. With this game, it's tense. Like, when you're hiding from the xenomorph, like when it's around. But it's more tense because like it's got stealth elements, and in VR, you have all the things that we all know and love from VR, the spatialness and all that. And when it's walking by and the sounds that it makes, and you hear the thump of its footsteps, and then when it kills you, which will happen, like you die in a very visceral way, like with its it impales you, and if it impales you from behind, you look down, you see it coming through your stomach. It's pretty incredible. I really dig this mod, and the fact that they're only going to make it better, is awesome. And one thing, before I got VR, I wasn't ever around on the DK1 and the DK2 days, but at some point Sega had this native. Chris, you may know more about it since you were back in the DK days.
Yeah, I used to play it.
Yeah, so you know about it, and it was native then. I guess it was still with a gamepad though, right? Like, there was no motion controls.
All the same problems you listed, like the terminals were here. It was kind of like a hacked in option that people found that was like shipped accidentally type thing. So yeah.
So it may be an older experience now, but if we don't have this problem, the three of us, because we're always getting keys and we always have something we need to get to. But I think back to to regular consumers of VR that they really want to think about their purchases, and they want to think of the mileage that they can get out of an experience. This one is it's a full featured game, and it's pretty incredible in VR. It's limited, it's gamepad, there's little quirks here and there. It's not as fluid as say a native game, but it's definitely worth checking out. And in fact, it's one of I think it came out in 2014. And it was one of the most popular games to come out just in general that year. So to experience in VR is really good.
I think it would be really cool if there was a VR arcade experience that was based on this, where you're physically crawling through almost like air ducts, right? Kind of unseen diplomacy style. It'd be difficult to do this because you'd be wearing a VR headset. You'd have to have a backpack PC that's on you. And then you would have to have like these walls of the vents would have to be there, but you couldn't have tops because you need to have I guess maybe if you made them like plexiglass or something. I wonder how it would work with the lighthouses tracking you. But to me, that would seem incredibly visceral to be physically crawl and really feeling, how what do you call it, claustrophobic, you would be inside these tunnels. And it'd be super cool if they also had some type of heat thing. So like when you're shooting your your flamethrower, you actually feel heat and stuff as well. So I just gave the Void a good idea for their next experience right there.
Well, now that you mentioned that, though, there was I was reading, I think on Reddit, just someone was talking about having just visited, maybe it was a Void experience, but they had said that there were elements of heat, like they had some sort of heating device, and they had some sense of sulfur. So as they were going through this experience, they and I forgot what the experience was. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but it had some of those, extra elements. Like they talk about in the book Ready Player One. Like there's smelling devices that you can get and everything like that. And I think that stuff is incredible. I think it's limited though to an arcade. It's got to be a very specific, tailored experience. I don't know how we get that type of stuff for our homes. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
All righty. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Was there anything else we were going to try to get into?
Nope. I think we've got a full boat here.
Okay. So basically what we'll do is we'll say, like always, obviously, subscribe to our channel. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and tickle that little like button there and give it a little press. Let's see what else. We always love the iTunes reviews, of course. We could use a few of those, and that's pretty much it. We should be back next week. I believe Gary will be joining us next week, so we'll be back to kind of a normal week there. And, other than that, that'll pretty much do it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.